Hello, friends. Let's talk about what is the true new year. I know a lot of you will have your own opinions and questions about this, so just please put them below and let's talk about it in the comment section. I've been studying this for quite a while, and it started when I learned astrology, but this year at the new year, I really wanted to dig into this question because what I have found is that there are three new years. There's the solar year, there's the lunar year, and there's our calendar that we use, which is the Gregorian calendar. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories and this kind of thing around this kind of information, and I'm not going to be addressing it that way. I'm going to be addressing it with the idea of how do I flow this in my life? Like, how can I use the information about what these things are and work them together so that I'm more successful, so that I'm more effective, so that I have more joy, and so that I can match my life with the seasons, with the natural flow of energy. And I think that this really grounds us and connects us both with our bodies, with the earth, and each other. And I have been living this way, and I have found that it is really beneficial to me. So let me just show you this, okay? Here is the Lunar New Year. And the Lunar New Year begins in Aries. And so when you hear people say this isn't the beginning of the year, January 1st, it's really in the spring. Well, that's because that's when the Lunar New Year starts. And when people say that, they may or may not understand that that is what they're talking about. The new moon in Aries varies depending on the day. When you're talking about the lunar year, it varies every year, okay, what day each month starts on. And I'll show you that in a second. So in 2025, Aries begins in the Pacific West Coast, March 29, 2025. So that's the beginning of the Lunar New Year. So it is true that the new year starts in the spring. And then there's a new moon and a full moon for each month, each lunar month. Now, the interesting thing here is I want to show you the lunar months and the lunar years, okay? Some of you are going to really know this, but I just want to cover everything, even if this is their first time with this. So here is a 12-month lunar year. Now, here's something that adds complexity. Once in a while, there's 13 lunar months. I have looked at the past 40 years, 10 years, and about 40% of the time, there are 13 months. So usually there's 12 lunar months in a solar year. And I'll explain the solar year in a second. What is a lunar year? The month begins at the new month, and that's the bottom of this wave. Okay, so here's a close-up on the wave. There's your new moon. Okay, the middle of the month is the full moon, and the end of the month is the day before the next new moon. So each of these periods is about 2 weeks. Now that would add up to 28 days, but here's the thing. Even though the turtle shell shows, 28 spaces, and people interpret that as being the length of the month, that the month should be, that's not accurate. That's not actually what it is, at least in the current day. I'm not saying that it wasn't that at some point. So here's the thing. Here's the lunar year for 2025. I want you to see this detailed example. I did these calculations all by hand just because I find it easier to really get the understanding that way. What you can see is the length of the month is actually roughly 29 and a half days, but it is as short as 28 and 3/4 in 2025 and as long as 29 and 3/4 days for a few months. So here's the trick here. The lunar month is only 352 days, okay? 352 and 3/4. So it's 12 and a half and a quarter days less than 365, less than the solar year, which goes from, if we do the day after the solstice, the 22nd to the 21st, that's 365 days, okay? So as soon as I really did this by hand and saw it, I could see what the issue is. How do you fit lunar months exactly into a solar year? So let's look at the solar year. Okay, so the solar year is from solstice to solstice, okay? Solstice to solstice. The peak of the year is the summer. This is, of course, in the northern hemisphere, because Western civilization is from the northern hemisphere, and this is what this is all. This is our culture, okay? How we counted things, and specifically, time and seasons and things. Okay, so this is 365 days. So let me show you that sine wave. And I'm using sine wave because it's a flow of energy. And what I'm talking about is that we can use this information to align with the natural flows of energy. So here's your winter solstice. This is hours of light, and this is the lowest amount of light during the day in hours and minutes and seconds. The peak light is during the summer. Then we go back to the winter. Okay, so you could see each day as a sine wave. So, spiritually speaking, each day we begin again. Each day, we can make a new choice. We can do something new in our life. And as the years go by, we can have intentions for the year, but we also, can set those intentions and accomplishments monthly here. Okay, whether there's 12 or 13 months, it doesn't matter. This is the flow of things. This is the flow of energy that is in our external environment. And, having studied this human resonance for so many years, this just made so much sense to me to add this layer of what's called astrology or astronomy to how does the energy affect us? I just want to show you something here. What our calendar does is it attempts to bridge between the solar year and the lunar year. Now, sine waves go in flows. They don't go in points. So the winter solstice is one day, right? There is a day when there's the lowest level of light. But as I explained on my last video, if you go by hours and minutes, there's actually several days which have the lowest amount of light. So this is what I showed you on the last video. Winter solstice, December 21st. That's the last day of really the sine wave, okay, of energy for the year. But every endpoint is also really a starting point, right? So it's technically also the same day as the solar year, because at some point during the day the seconds shift and light starts being added, but let's not get into that minutia. Essentially, what our calendar does is it attempts to reconcile, right, these things, and it actually honors the days of darkness by celebrating Christmas, Christ Mass. The light, and Mass means man in Latin. The light, right, returns to man. And we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ on that day. The light returns to earth, okay? So it's just what I came to in researching all this was an actual appreciation of our calendar, and I didn't think that would happen. And the reason why is that, see, this is 352 and 3/4 days, but the length of the lunar year is going to slightly vary from solar year to solar year. Okay, so the idea here is that you can look at the lunar year within the solar year, right? So here, there we go. Okay, so we've got one lunar year and you've got one solar year here. So the lunar year is within the solar year But because it's the moon, sometimes it goes a little past the solar year. Sometimes it goes just about up until the solar year. And you can see that here, okay, on this list of the months. Like in 2025, this last month of the lunar year ends December 18. Well, that's like a few days from the solstice, right? So if we put the lunar months within the solar year and we start with the new moon, that comes right after the solstice, that's how I looked at it. So here I started the lunar year in December because of that, right? In 2024, the new moon right after the solstice on the 21st was on December 30th. But indeed, this March 29th is the beginning of Aries. This is the beginning of the lunar year. Okay, so what does this mean for maximizing this energy in our life and flowing it? Well, in the solar year, right, starting in the winter, the seeds are under the ground, and they're under the ground. There's sort of rumblings here. It might feel warm for a little bit, but it's really not till spring that the seeds are going to start to come out of the ground and grow, which coincides exactly with the start of the lunar year. It's really matched perfectly. If you think about pregnancy, when a woman gets pregnant, right, the baby is inside the body. It doesn't come out for 9 months, right, when the baby is born. So that's basically a period of, it's a sacred time. The seeds are in the ground, the baby is in the womb growing, dreams are dreaming about, what will be, right? The new birth, the new life that's to come. Aries, the moon, okay? So the moon in astrology is about embodying, right? Embodying your emotions, embodying your primal instincts, embodying your mind, the primal mind even. And it's different than Mercury. It's different than Mercury, but there's a nature of the mind that is included in the lunar energy. Okay, so embodying at Earth, Aries, the start of the lunar month, right? The human, the soul that's been in the body, that's developing over the gestation period, is born in the spring. And I'm comparing birth to this. Obviously, this is only 3 months. Birth is 9 months, but it's a good example, right? It's a good example to show how to use this. So why don't New Year's resolutions work? Well, because we're telling ourselves we have to initiate projects, goals, etc. on January 1st, but initiation is here. So January 1st is the time to do the dreaming. And maybe you're putting small, steps into place. But what you want to do is you want to come out with a big bang, like a big formal celebration of here it is, world, bring it out here. So to put pressure on yourself to be producing goals exact to what you declare you want for the year on January 1st is like jumping the gun, okay? And you can't rush these things. And if you try, the results are going to be suboptimal. So this is what I talked about at the beginning. How do we flow this information in our life and use it to our greatest benefit? And I'm not interested in, controversies and conspiracies. I'm interested in, this is what it is. How do we live knowing that this is what it is? And I've got to tell you something. I came to a surprising appreciation of the Gregorian calendar in doing this research, because if you're mathematically minded and intuitively, okay, I'm very good intuitively with math, to be able to figure out how to make a calendar when the moon is like all over the place. Okay. It's just, every year it starts on the lunar year, even if we're going to look at Aries, starts on a different day. There's a different number of months in a solar year. I mean, how they figured out a calendar that has lasted and been good, for it's worked for our civilization for hundreds of years. And how they did that without a supercomputer is quite stunning. And what's really interesting that I also realized, and I did not have an appreciation of this before, doing the research for this video. Here's what I realized. The Gregorian calendar actually reconciles the solar year, the lunar year, the astrology wheel, the zodiac. It reconciles the Christian holidays. It reconciles pagan tradition. It reconciles Roman tradition and Greek tradition. And the reason I say Greek is because the astrology wheel is based on the math of Ptolemy, going way back to Greek, ancient Greek civilization. And even the Arab astrologers who really were in mastery of the astrology wheel, and even a lot of our information, like key points and things, comes from them. They based their calculations on Ptolemy's work. And the calendar that we use actually includes all of that. So the thing that's fascinating about the calendar year, okay, now I'm going to focus on the zodiac here. Part of it is they were able to create a series of months that for each astrology sign that has a new moon and a full moon in each of the 12 months that match the astrology, and where it's worked for hundreds of years. And I'm just going to say that that's stunning, that 500 to 600 years ago that this was done. And I have an appreciation for the way that our current calendar blends this together. And the thing is that all that information was lost. And is that a conspiracy? Probably yes. Okay. But we're in the Aquarian age now. Like, we can change. And how do I do it? I just want to tell you how I live this. Basically, I live according to the lunar year. Like, I acknowledge, okay, it's January, but I know that the lunar year started December 30th. Okay, it started with the new moon December 30th. And I'm going to celebrate the lunar months. Why? Because this is the cycle of creation on the earth, the lunar months. So basically, okay, this month, what do I want to achieve? Here I am beginning my dreams that I'm going to really roll out in Aries, right? March 29th and after. Well, I use the new moon to initiate, the full moon to harvest, and then, and complete. Then we start again in February. The middle here of this quarter of the lunar year and the solar year is the full moon in February. That roughly kind of equates with the Chinese New Year. It's a couple weeks off, so I don't understand that. But yeah, so it's fascinating how all these things flow together. So I use that creation cycle here, okay? And then for the solar year, I use this creation cycle to say, from the level of my soul, what do I dream on to accomplish for this solar year? Like, how is God guiding me? How does my soul desire to express the living flame of the Creator that animates me as a living human? Here's a living human. Here am I as a living soul. So from the level of soul, my mission from God, what do I want to create in this solar year? And then I use my human self to roll it out in the lunar year. See that? Isn't that cool? I just absolutely love it. And I want to say one other thing about the reconciliation here. And that is that, the pagan tradition, for people who aren't familiar, and I have quite a few pagan friends who follow the true earth religion, or maybe it's not a religion, anyway, practices. And this is the history of our culture. it's not like this separate thing between Christianity and paganism, although it's always presented that way as far as I have been able to see over the years, except for people who have some understanding over this. This is the traditional culture of Europe, okay? And it was on the lunar year and the solar year, and they kind of celebrated them both together. So the Gregorian calendar came in and included all of these things in a linear kind of calendar. I don't know if linear is the right word, but in a calendar that acknowledged all of these. And it's interesting because it does things like acknowledge the 3 days of darkness. And then I don't know if this is a coincidence. It's probably not. There are 12 days of Christmas, okay? That's Christmas tide. And I just thought it was interesting that there's a 12-day difference this year, okay? Or actually it's going to be in 2025. There's a 12-day difference between the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. So the details of that piece, I'm going to have to do a separate video on because it's going to take a lot of research to see if, how many days is it usually. But I just thought that was interesting. Like there's more to all this than, I really realized. And, how am I living? I'm living to honor all of these. Like when I make appointments with the friends, I use the Gregorian calendar, okay? Hey, do you want to get together on January, whatever? Or on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? But when I'm living my life, like just me, and I'm seeing what am I going to do today? Like, what am I going to do this month? What does my heart desire? Does my soul wish for me to have as my mission? I'm living on the natural cycle, right? So I'm using this calendar to engage with other humans or groups of humans. And then I'm using this calendar to live personally, right? And this is to live with the group. Okay, guys, I really hope that this has been highly beneficial for you. The understanding these things, which I've come to with a lot of help from my girlfriends who have really they have had years and years of study, practice, and understanding of these cycles. And so I'm grateful to them for their contribution to my life in that way, because learning to align my energy with the natural flow of things and, adding the zodiacal cycles has been really something absolutely wonderful and amazing that has enhanced my life. Thank you.